Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. I am the host, Kirsten Howe with Absolute Trust Counsel, and I'm very excited to have my guest today, Ed Gines, who I'll introduce officially in just a minute, but I just want to let you know we are going to be talking about the PPP Loan Forgiveness process, and that's a very important thing for many of my clients who are business owners and I know have taken PPP loans, as have I. And now we've got to go through that whole process of figuring out how do we get part of it or all of it, ideally, forgiven. And it's complicated, but Ed's going to give us some really good tips. Okay, now I'm going to remind my regular viewers the things that you already know, but some of you are not regular viewers. You're brand new. So Ed and I are going to talk for 15-20 minutes. We will have questions at the end. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in the comment area, and I'll read the questions at the end. If you know somebody who you think should be watching, but they didn't, they weren't able to be here at 11:30, it'll be on our website. We're going to record it. It'll be on our website. So they can get it probably in about 2 days. Go look to our website, absolutetrustcounsel.com. All right, now this is a great show, and my guest is a great person to talk about this topic. He's, I think, the expert on this topic. He might disagree, but you'll see. As I said, my expert guest is Ed Gines, and Ed is the founder of Strategic CFOs, and he's the primary CFO controller consultant for a bunch of his clients. In addition to directing strategic CFOs, he often partners with other, with tax preparers and other finance professionals to help them deliver comprehensive financial services to their clients. Prior to founding Strategic CFOs, Ed worked as a controller, director, and CFO for multiple companies throughout the Bay Area. He also owned a boutique lending firm with 4 employees and a collateral creation distribution company with 150 employees. So he really knows a whole lot about running a business. That, boots on the ground experience, actually running your own business, helps you to be an advisor to other businesses. Ed received his undergraduate degree from Cal, which, if you're watching from another state, you call it UC Berkeley, and his MBA from Cal State University, East Bay. He's got more than 25 years of finance experience, and he enjoys working with senior management and board members to help companies enhance their profitability. So Ed, thank you so much for being here with us. I'm just honored that you are taking the time to help my viewers, listeners, my clients understand this whole thing.
My pleasure, of course, Kirsten. Always, if you need help.
All right. Okay. So we're talking about the PPP loan, which everybody's heard about. It's been all over the news. The federal government made a whole lot of money available to small and small-ish businesses based on payroll. The idea being, if we can give these businesses money to pay their payroll, they can keep people working during this pandemic. And just to establish a base level, we'll talk about a couple of fundamentals and then we'll go into the rest of it. But we're talking about today, we're not talking about the loan application process. That's pretty much over. You either have your money or you're not getting money. But now we have the opportunity to have some of that forgiven and not treated as a loan, but treated as basically a grant or something akin to that. So a few of the basics there are, I just want to cover, what are the expenses generally that are eligible for forgiveness?
Yeah, you bet, of course. And they call it PPP, short for Paycheck Protection Program. Minimum 60% towards payroll, minimum. And there's some little tweaks in there that says, hey, if I'm a small business owner, there's limits to how much I, the business owner, can contribute against that forgiveness monies. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of important. It's the fine print inside the SBA wording.
Okay, so what I think you just said, whatever you borrowed, you've got to spend at least 60% of that on payroll.
Yes, ma'am.
And that number may or may not include you, the business owner.
Yeah, and to dive in just a little bit more, it could be 100% payroll, which is preferred, right? That's supporting the economy a little bit more.
That's the point of it.
And that gap between 60 and 100 can go towards other things, rents, utilities, and a business interest on property owned through the business.
Okay, so that other 40% or so, there are some other specific things you're allowed to spend that on and have it forgiven.
Yes, eligible for forgiveness. I mean, just kind of a very technical word. It's a loan, and our goal, all business owners, is really to convert that into extraordinary income, non-taxable. Accounting words, but simplified, right? Simplified.
Okay. And this is, I think, more pressing question, but fundamental, basic. When are we supposed to be applying for forgiveness?
Yeah. Now there's, I'm going to go deep for 1 second and then go very general. Applying for it implies there's a taxable event. So when the business owner is thinking about this, think about 2020 or 2021 from a tax perspective. Because once that letter is issued from the lender, you've got a taxable event.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And that being very deep into the weeds.
Okay.
But you have to spend the money within generally 24 weeks of receipt of funds. And a lot of us got the funds in April, May, some in June, and a very minor point, the doors are still open for applications through this Saturday, surprisingly, through this Saturday. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there is still money available for people who haven't yet applied.
Yes.
But that ends in 2 days.
Yeah, game over.
Okay, so if you're not watching this live, if you're watching the recorded version, it's probably too late. Okay, just to be really clear. Okay, so thank you for that. So let's focus more. Those were kind of easy questions. We get to the more complicated, and it's complicated. It's very complicated because there are a bunch of calculations that you have to do before you sit down and fill out your forgiveness application. In the forgiveness process, there's a sort of a threshold inquiry, which I'm going to phrase as what percentage of my PPP loan can be forgiven. So it's like a threshold. You got to figure that out before anything else. And as I understand it, that calculation is based upon a comparison of your payroll during one period versus your payroll in another period. Yeah. Can you, am I kind of close there? And can
you are close. I mean, we could spend hours on this discussion because I had to spend many hours on trying to understand this concept. Let's oversimplify. Let's just say $100 towards payroll, just 100 for simplicity, which we all want forgiven. But if there was a trend line from the past of what your company was doing relative to what we call, fancy way of saying employees, FTEs, full-time equivalents, if that trend line is going the wrong direction, the government's going to say you cannot forgive all $100 of it. And you go, what does that mean? Well, this formal word called FTEs, it's a reduction quotient. There it is. The reduction quotient, which is very deep inside, FTE reduction quotient, which really will limit the amount of dollars eligible depending on how you're spending the monies now for payroll versus how you were doing prior COVID. Oversimplified, right? But it really does work that way. So if you have fewer employees now and you had more back then, you got to find a solution on how to do that and spend it over the 24 weeks to get as close to 100% forgiveness as possible. Unfortunately, each business has a different scenario. So there has to be some analysis that goes into it in order to make sure you get 100% forgiveness.
Right. So yeah, I mean, every business is different. You can't give one piece of, here's what you got to do. This is how you're going to get maximum forgiveness. You can't do that. It depends on the business. Yeah. Okay. So we're comparing some time period now,
Mhm.
some time period after we got our money. We're comparing that payroll to a payroll period or periods prior to when we got our money.
Let
And
me
there's
help.
specific periods.
The periods is the covered period, which kind of makes sense. Covered period is when the monies came in to the bank. That's the covered period. Let's
Right.
just simplify it. May 15th, it came in. You have till about end of October, 24 weeks, and that's your covered period versus your comparative period, which there are two, making it more complex that the government says you have a choice.
Oh, we get to choose.
Yes, you do have a choice. They try to make it as lenient as possible, as flexible as possible. But of course, there's guardrails on both ends. And those comparative periods, one of them happened to be in 2019. And the other comparative period was January through February of this year.
Oh, okay.
Pre-COVID, right? So you have a comparison. Mhm.
Okay. So you get to pick which one ends you up with the better percentage or ratio.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think as the company keeps getting bigger, if you have 10 employees, lo and behold, you've got to do some calculations to determine what's your FTE on a specific day, FTE full-time equivalent, or what was the FTE average over a period of time. And all of a sudden, we're all scratching our heads as accountants, like, how do you show that? Because the banks and the SBA want to verify through third-party documents that in fact this is true. Oh, got it. Okay, we will issue you a 78.2% forgiveness against your $100. Oh, you've had some strategy put in. We'll give you 98.7% of the $100, right?
Okay. Okay. So there are, I guess that takes me to, there are things that one can do. I guess what I'm hearing you say is a really good thing to do is look at it now, run it and see where you are. And then based on your individual business, there are some strategies.
Oh, absolutely.
You could increase that number.
Yeah, and there's one, if there's some takeaways from today in terms of just words, look out for the words FTE reduction quotient. Just if anyone remembers that and asks their accountant, hey, what's my FTE reduction quotient? He goes, oh, it's 100%, you're good. Or they go, well, we don't know, it's about 82 point something. Just watch out for those words. The other one is, take these words away, safe harbor 2. Not 1, but 2, right? There are 2. There's different safe harbors, and that is an escape clause that can get you closer to 100%.
Safe harbor 2.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I to ignore safe harbor 1?
No, not at all. I just think safe harbor 2 is much more impactful towards the bottom line of the conversion of the liability into extraordinary income, non-taxable.
Okay. And you have, I mean, there are instructions for how to do there's lots of calculation. There's a lot of calculation that goes into this and a lot of gathering of data, specifically your payroll data. And you have a spreadsheet. It's a really crazy, complicated spreadsheet. I saw it. It made my head spin, which is why I'm not an accountant. But anyway, you and your company, you have spent hours and hours and hours learning these requirements, learning how to do the calculations, working with this spreadsheet.
Well, there are more than one spreadsheet out there, and I want to be fair to the AICPA,
Mm-hmm.
which American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. It's their spreadsheet, but the hours and hours and hours that we put in is based on their working papers on creating that spreadsheet. But that took time to make sure all of the ins and outs between the worksheets. That took a little bit of time. So you can self-prepare. The question is, how many hours are you willing to devote to it? Because we devoted a lot of time just to limit.
Well,
it's unfortunately painful. It really is, as the company gets bigger.
exactly. Yeah. And the more there is at stake, if it's $10,000 and you can increase your return from 60% to 65%, well,
Yeah.
big deal. But if it's $200,000 and you can increase your return by consulting with somebody who knows what they're doing, by 10%, that's $20,000 in your pocket that you don't have to pay back. So, it does make sense. I'm just so impressed by the amount of knowledge that you have accumulated in such a short period of time. And we know, I've been watching this for a while there. It was like almost every week they were releasing, oh, here's an update. Here's what you need to know about the forgiveness process.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a moving target for you too. And you really have mastered this. And I know that you helped people who were having a hard time getting PPP by mastering that whole process. You helped a lot of people actually get the money.
Yeah. Even through today, one of my colleagues is still submitting applications through Saturday because we get, we need some help. We need some help. And I'm like, our pleasure.
You can help. Yeah. So it's a really complicated process. And Ed, would imagine that, for some industries, it might be hard for them to spend all the money the way that it's meant to be spent in the time period that's meant to be spent. But the planning opportunities vary, not just by the particular business, but also across industries.
Agreed. And to kind of add flavor to that, right? When we are involved, or just in general, in terms of planning over the 24-week period, right, it's findings and recommendations. So after a company runs a payroll report, well, what percentage are you now? Are you getting closer to 100? If so, what are some of the strategies, the recommendations that are available to you in order for it to get that number as high as possible? We all don't want a loan sitting at the balance sheet. Balance sheet's a fancy word of a liability out there that's, you got to pay it back, even if it's a low rate. Well, why not strategize and try to figure it out ahead of time? Because those 24 weeks are critical for certain industries that really were hampered by COVID.
Yeah, some industries, you could take a snapshot of them in March and April, and it's totally different picture from June. And completely different. And then there are industries that are only now feeling the effect of COVID, and they're starting to feel that on their bottom line these many months later, whereas other industries felt it right away. So the strategizing is...
Well, there's an element that I wanted to share with you that I think is kind of important. I brought it up earlier, but it's one of the tax planning side of recognizing this as a taxable event when the business gets the forgiveness letter. Did you want to recognize that additional income in 2020, this year, or the possibility of recognizing it in the following year? It really matters because you kind of look up, are sales down this year? Are sales up? Or by miracle, or are steady? It depends, and that's the conversational piece that really should take place prior to submitting all the paperwork to the
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So that's a kind of a strategizing about the timing.
The
Okay.
timing of recognition of the
Okay.
forgiveness as opposed to the percentage of.
Right.
So there's
Right.
two moving parts that are really important.
Okay. I wasn't even aware of that. I hadn't. That's
You're busy
excellent
running your
advice.
world, right?
Yeah,
You're busy.
that's excellent advice. Because I mean, the difference between 1 year and another year can be night and day. I've definitely seen that in my practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great conversation where we're just kind of thinking out loud our clients and just going, okay, what should we do? And then I think they find value in that, the ability to forecast a little bit more.
Okay, what I want to point out to our listeners before I move on to another question that I have in my mind before I forget, I just want to let people know one of the things, aside from setting aside all this time to talk to me, that you have done is you've provided us with a really great tool. It's sort of a frequently asked questions about this PPP, the whole PPP process. And you can see across the top, it's got color coding and it is in a gradation. And the questions correspond. So that's sort of the PPP timeline. First, we applied for the money, then we got the money, then we tried to use the money. Now we have to ask for forgiveness. And the frequently asked questions are organized in that same way down. So it's so easy to use and it's really relevant. And so Ed has provided that not just to me, I'm going to share that on my website. It'll be on the podcast page, absolutetrustcounsel.com. In the show notes for this episode, you can go print out a copy of this frequently asked questions for yourself, and that will also guide you to Ed as a resource as well. His web address, strategic-cfos.com. He also put his email address on there. Just saying, you might get a flood of questions in your inbox in the next couple of weeks, and his phone number. So, if you are a small business owner and you need help with figuring out how to get as much forgiven as you can, and that's what we all should be doing, Ed would be happy to talk to you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're all challenged right now, right? In one way, shape, or form, and we need to give back. We need to help out.
Right.
Get back to the community and help, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So my question: we've been talking about the forgiveness process. I'm guessing that there's a form of some sort, an application form.
There are two. And surprisingly, I'd like to make a joke of this one, but the more formal, think of these are tax returns, right? But instead of a 1040, they call it a 3508. Okay, it's a form name. And we've all heard of 1040EZ.
Right.
Well, there's a 3508EZ.
Oh.
What was surprising was I was trying to figure it out for myself. It wasn't that easy. It was like, but if you went through COVID as a business from beginning to end, and there was really the same thing, is steadies, didn't reduce your head count, nothing really changed. Easy might work for you, and take it and run with it and make it easy. But very few will qualify to use the easy, because the majority of us are going, no, I don't think I qualify.
Yeah. But it's there.
It's there. Oh, it's there. It's there to confuse you at first to see if you're even eligible for it.
Chances are you can't use it, but it's there just in case. So it might apply to some. And so, but that's not it. Just there's the form, and then there's probably backup documentation that goes with it.
Yes, I'd love to spend hours and hours.
I know,
but we won't. So 1040, we all know that. And then
Yeah.
there's schedules behind it, schedule A, B, C, D, E.
Oh, right.
Well, they have worksheets, which they call it a Schedule A. And they have a Schedule A, and you have to submit the 3508 and Schedule A. But like for our personal tax returns, you never have to submit the worksheets that build up to build a Schedule A, that build up and roll into the 1040. But if someone comes asking for supporting documents, you better have it.
You better have them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The IRS is not
Yeah.
friendly. SBA too.
Okay. So that's helpful. You know, the IRS never asks you to submit all your receipts. You keep that in your shoebox, but you better have them. And you better have used them to come up with your numbers. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
You're just going to submit a schedule. Here you go.
Yeah.
This is what you need to know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That analogy is very helpful.
Yeah, and the lenders might ask for a little bit more. They might.
Oh, okay.
They might. And we'll find out. But the lenders are all nervous. What do we need to do to protect our position too?
So is it fair to say then that we know there's the 3580, we know it has specific schedules, but your lender might modify the forgiveness process individually for that particular institution. So you got to watch for that too.
Yeah, broad stroke, I think it all looks the same, but within the banks, there might be a little bit of minor adjustments that they'll require.
Right. Okay. That's good advice. That's really good advice. Okay. So what I would like to do is turn to the questions, because I think a lot of the viewers have better questions than I do. And I want to make sure we hit all of those. So let's see. Oh, okay. So it went away. Where did it go? Oh, no. When does one, no, I don't want to do that. When does one have to start repaying the portion of their PPP loan that is not forgiven?
6 months. 6 months after the forgiveness letter, because we all need to know how much are we still owe after the forgiveness letter. So
Okay.
There's been that deferral, and then they go plus 6 months.
Okay, so originally they were saying when we first got the money, it was you're going to start repaying in 6 months. And now they're saying, no, you're going to wait 6 months after we tell you how much you owe us.
Yeah, makes sense, right?
Which is fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. That's actually generous. We get another 6 months, you know, I like that. Okay, so now we've been talking about comparing payroll periods. So this is a question, I think, related to that. So how does an employee who got laid off because of COVID and then later declined an offer to be rehired, how does that figure into these calculations?
It's a fantastic question for those that are in the industry. There are there are clauses inside that allow for making your FTE slightly larger. Meaning, if there was an employee that couldn't come back, kind of answering around the question, you can document that in your payroll reports to make it easier to get closer to 100% forgiveness. So there's this little clause in there. I'm literally looking at the spreadsheet and I know where to input it in the spreadsheet, but that's where you would put that number. You just have to read the fine print as to, did that employee that was didn't come back, that was laid off, do they qualify under certain criteria in order to make your forgiveness a bigger percentage?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again,
So
we have to look at the fine print of what happened in the situation to help guide the business owner. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I have another question. This is coming from a borrower, an employer. Do bonuses that I pay to my employees count in calculating the percentage of forgiveness?
Up to a certain dollar amount. If some of your employees are earning greater than $100,000, the government says this is the Paycheck Protection Program to help the rank and file. If that bonus was pushed the other employee above $100,000, there's a cap.
Got it. Okay.
Just to add a little bit more flavor to it, for those smaller business owners, we as shareholders of our own corporation are treated a little bit differently. Again, the government's looking out for employees, not employees/owners. A little bit less for us.
Okay. But for most situations, a bonus is also payroll.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Up to $100,000.
Okay. There's a cap, and then the employee is treated differently. Okay. Do employer 401k contributions count in the forgiveness calculation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Summary plan documents, which is a fancy way of saying, there's some comparative periods on that between 19 and 20. And literally on August 4th, the SBA just released some more findings relative to the retirement account contributions.
Mm-hmm.
So it just came out. I just kind of started looking at it. I think there are more limitations than there were before. They're tightening the belt. They're refining the program. So the answer is yes, but let's read the fine print. That's what's issued on August 4th. And that's on the SBA website.
August 4th. Okay, so just so everybody knows, today is August 6th.
Yeah, it was just released a couple days ago.
They're tinkering with it.
They are.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know how somebody like me is going to know all of those things. How am I going to know all of these things? I'm not going to. I need to find somebody who does. So I'm just, anybody out there who's watching, I'm going to have Ed help me with my forgiveness. If he'll have me, if he'll take me on as a client.
Of course.
It's a very complicated process, and there could be a lot at stake.
I mean, in summary, back in March, April, May, we were reading the fine print as much as we could. And I was confused. And night after night, I kept reading the same language in there, and it was confusing.
Yeah.
And less so now. But for those that want to be cavalier about it, more power to you. We all want to do the right things for ourselves, but sometimes it's just like meeting yourself in the. So, yeah, we're here.
You're here. Yeah, good to know.
And of course, there are others. We're not exclusive, but there are plenty of others that are qualified.
Sure.
If not more qualified. Being very
well, you can't help every person who took one of those loans, but you can help as many as you can help. You're just one company. Thank you so much, Ed. I learned a lot. I'm sure the viewers and listeners have learned a lot as well. I'm going to remind everybody to look for this guide, and you can see it on our website. But thank you so much for everything that you've provided to us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We at Absolute Trust Counsel, we are here. We are working. We do estate planning. We do probates, trust administration. We help small business owners with their planning. Anything you need help with, we are here, and we're doing it, pandemic or no. We're happy to help you. There's lots of resources on our website, though. I just want to point you to that, absolutetrustcounsel.com. There's all kinds of free guides, other podcast episodes. I've been very grateful, very fortunate to have some really great guests over the years. Just go there and take a look around. You'll find something useful to you. And if you need our help, it's very easy. You go to our website. There's a calendaring tool there. You can schedule yourself an appointment. You can call us. You can email us. We make it as easy for you as you can all the way through. So thank you for joining me here today. I hope you got something out of it, and I really look forward to connecting with you next time.